Hi, welcome to Steaming It Up Anywhere. I'm Kristen Brennison from NIU STEAM. And today we have Nathan from Franklin STEAM Academy. Hi, Nathan.
Hello, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too. So you teach sixth grade at Franklin, correct?
Yes, yes, ma'am. Yep, sixth grade writing and also a sixth grade Avid.
Excellent, excellent. So you're talking to us today a little bit about how you STEAMified your writing class. So let's go ahead and tell us about that and how it went.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna go get into a little short presentation that I put together for you all of how I incorporated STEAM into my classroom for writing. Um, so first slide, I kind of just wanted to introduce myself. Again, I'm Nathan McCallum. I teach at a Title I middle school in Champaign, Illinois, Franklin STEAM Academy. I am a sixth grade writing teacher as well as an Avid teacher. I also am the head track coach and cross country coach. I also run a nonprofit organization after school and during school for the community of Champaign-Urbana, even during the summer, called Project Athletes. I am a professional development team leader for my school and district. And here recently, I just became the communication enrichment leader for our school for our sound and video booth. So that's a whole nother STEAM aspect that I hope to one day maybe share with all of you about how we've incorporated into our school to kind of get kids into the studio and, make some cool interactive pieces.
I've
Um,
seen the studio. It's amazing. I love it.
it is so great, and we have so many good projects. I just didn't want to get too much into that today because a lot of those projects are unfortunately at the computer back in Franklin. So yeah, I couldn't access them. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to show you all the kind of roles I fulfill at Franklin and how I try to basically get some great STEAM-tastic ideas into the classroom as well as outside of the classroom. What I'm going to focus on today, though, are three main aspects. I'm going to focus on how I've incorporated STEAM into my writing class. Secondly, I'm going to get into different examples that I've done. And then last but not least, I'm going to get into my results. I've basically created two little mini projects or mini units in which I've incorporated into my writing curriculum that incorporate some elements of STEAM. And I want to share how I kind of did that in a fun, imaginative way for the kids. And then, of course, I'm going to show you some of the examples that I have. I don't have all of them because unfortunately, most of them are physical copy or on poster boards at school or hanging up in the hallway, and I wasn't able to access them due to, the current situation we're in. And then I kind of want to get to my last point and leave you all with the results that I've seen from the kids, from, how by incorporating these STEAM-tastic ideas into the classroom, how that's kind of helped the kids to kind of be better as far as, an educational standpoint and their own behavior. So without further ado, this is how I've been steaming it up and writing. Due to our district fortunately being a one-to-one within our schools with technology, students are able to access Chromebooks in each of their classrooms. So basically each classroom has a Chromebook cart, and we're all able to give and have accessibility for these kids for a Chromebook so that they can get on one. Luckily for us, our entire writing curriculum was already online and done through Google Classroom. So, in the current situation we are all in with COVID, it was an easy transition for us writing teachers, which might not have been an easy transition for other teachers. So we were very fortunate on that side just because most of our curriculum was already online, and everything we do in the classroom, we basically use technology for. So in using this T out of STEAM, that's what that red arrow is kind of pointing to, and incorporating technology into our classroom already, we're able to use, a variety of apps, a whole bunch of different platforms for these kids to learn and further their education, such as Google Slides, Hapara, where I can kind of control what they're on and what they're kind of supposed to be learning for the day. Other apps like QR code readers, stop motion, short film editing apps, different websites that allow them to access their grades, such as Jump Rope, other websites that build on their grammar and punctuation like No Red Ink and typing.com, and much more. So we're very fortunate in the technology aspect of STEAM and how we already incorporate STEAM into writing. And then building on top of that, and there's a fun little image of a Chromebook. This is how I kind of did in our writing curriculum this past year. So I created 2 mini units for our writing curriculum, which was a kind of, I call it the Halloween personal narrative. So right after our personal narrative unit, in which we usually do in the very beginning at the start of the year, kind of summed up, it finally came to a conclusion. I decided to incorporate a mini unit that went along with Halloween, because usually we finish right before Halloween. So I decided to create a project for that, and then I created another mini project for our fiction unit. I did it at the start of fiction to kind of get them into the, I guess, into the works of fiction, how fiction kind of works, and get them, warmed up for what we're about to do with fictional writing. I decided to develop these 2 projects to steam up the writing a bit, and these are the 2 that I provided. The first one has a lengthy title. It's called Social Media Profile Spooky Monster Project, and that's our Halloween personal narrative that I'll get into more detail about here in a second. And then our second project that I decided to include is comic books, and that's kind of what we warmed the kids up for fiction with. These, of course, were great ways of incorporating that A element, or the art element of STEAM, into our writing classes, especially into mine. And it kind of, boosted their creativity and their imagination into, these different sides of our curriculum and our different units. So I'm gonna now get into the second point that I all shared with you in the beginning of this presentation, which is the different examples. And I'm going to elaborate more on them. So the first one is the first project that I decided to include in my writing curriculum, which was the Social Media Profile Spooky Monster Project. Again, lengthy title, I apologize. But that's something that I decided to create for our Halloween kind of month. So our personal narrative unit concluded like right before Halloween, and I thought of a great idea, which I'd like to share with you, which is this project right here. So this project is in association with the Halloween theme. It was a way to incorporate all 3 of these apps that you see here right in front of you, which is Facebook, Instagram, and Book Creator. Including social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram was a great way to kind of get more buy-in from the kids. A lot of these kids, a lot of these 6th graders that I teach at least, have these social media platforms already. So, by them seeing those on the screen like you are now, they are already like, oh, what are we going to do? Oh, what is this? What's going to happen? So that was awesome. Book Creator is what I'll get into more detail about here in a second. But it's a great website to use for, illustrations, different books that you can create online, virtual ebooks that you can later publish to online as your kind of own website. So let me get into a little bit more detail about the project. So basically, these kids had to create a spooky monster. They had to design and write up a social media profile based on that monster. That monster had to incorporate elements kind of about them, which goes in association with the personal narrative. So personal narrative being about, them, of course, a story about them. So that character kind of had to have elements that were relatable to them, like personal interest or hobbies or even their personality traits. And then they had to kind of choose their own social media format. I gave them examples from Facebook, as you can see here, and Instagram. I kind of also allowed them to use their cell phone with principal permission. Once she approved, our principal, that they could take those out and look at their profiles, they were able to kind of look at different things that were on their profile that were specific to what they wanted to include, such as timeline or, post and what posts look like, or what the profile picture actually looks like. So a lot of those formatting tools that were already set for them on those apps, they kind of took those ideas, and some of them even traced them. So that was helpful. Having the kids, of course, take out their cell phones during class is always a bonus as well. So, I had to control that big time, but it actually worked out in a successful manner. Students also were able to use their Chromebooks. Like I said, we're a one-to-one school, and they were able to, trace different sketchings of different monsters that I provided for them, or, get on Google and look up different Facebook profiles or Instagram profiles in case they didn't have one. So having the Chromebook in place was very helpful. You know, a lot of those sketchings that they did, I had already provided a list of monsters they could choose from. So like werewolves or like ghouls or ghosts or, you know, just all kinds of different monsters that they might already know about, that they could kind of pick from. So it was nice having a list up on the board as well because a lot of kids were struggling with what monster to pick. Um, this is kind of what I provided the kids on Google Classroom. Google Classroom is what we provide most of our content for writing on. I know that my handwriting is super sloppy, but I'm going to kind of get into, you know, the details about this. So what I did is I provided basically my own kind of social media profile on a whiteboard in class. The whiteboard was really big. It's something we use for Avid, so it was great to kind of have in front of the class for this mini project for the allotted time. As you can see, they had to draw a profile picture in the top left, you know, and then have a name next to it. Behind all of that is a background image in which they kind of had to trace something big in the background, like maybe a scene of a forest or a graveyard or whatever they wanted to do. Maybe it was just pumpkins in the theme of Halloween. The left column there is taken from Facebook format. It's where you kind of give your intro, and they had to introduce their monster to the world. They had to give a brief explanation of who they are, an address that they had to make up that couldn't be their own, their phone, which was made up, where they work, their school, and relationship status. That was the funnest one. A lot of kids, you know, would either put single or married to a different monster. So that was exciting. So, you know, as you can already see, I've incorporated the writing element, right? So I'm trying to prompt the kids to, you know, get into those descriptions and incorporate, you know, writing that they typically didn't want to do but had to do because of my requirements. The middle column there is post. So the kids had to basically create their first post, which had to be in an album. You know, in that sloppy handwriting that you see there that you can't really read, I will go ahead and explain it. They had to basically write 2 paragraphs, no less. And some of them went a little bit more, but they didn't have to. But basically that the 2 paragraphs introduced their character. It told us what that post was about. You know, if it was a picture that they drew with their friends, their monster friends, they kind of had to tell us who was in that picture and what kind of monster they were. Then below they would tell us, like, you know, or draw a picture of what they were doing. That picture had to be something about what the monster typically does. You know, I told them, like, you know, if they're a vampire, then maybe they're sleeping in a coffin, or, you know, sleeping, you know, during the day. You know, I told them if it's a werewolf, maybe it's a picture of them transitioning when the full moon's out. So, you know, something that makes sense to their character, that they obviously maybe did research for and maybe kind of put that extra effort into, so that way, you know, it's a close relationship with what kind of character they built. And then below that, of course, just like a Facebook format or even Instagram format, they had to kind of create icons for like, comment, and share. And then they put down comments from their friends. And I found that this was probably the most interesting part, because a lot of the kids would put comments that, you know, their classmates shared that they would get ideas from. So that was the collaboration aspect. Or they would kind of look on their own profile and kind of look at comments and what their friends might have said on their post. And then also they really loved, like, creating the profile pictures of their friends. You know, the werewolf having a friend of, I don't know, maybe a creepy, like, alligator or whatever it may be. And then finally you get into the other columns, which are ads. They had to create advertisements for their characters. So my example was a creepy clown, and one of my advertisements was circus tickets. They're cheap. They're $2 for one. Click now. So, you know, a lot of kids got very creative with the advertisements they made for their character that had to be specific to their character, just like an Instagram or Facebook profile would be. And then finally, the last column that you see is their friends that were online. Uh, you know, they'd have to list a bunch of friends that they had. You can kind of see a couple that I had, which was like Zombie or Darth Vader. But you know, that was interesting to see them make up different names for their different friends that they had that were associated with their monster. So this was a fun little kind of project that we did. Unfortunately, I don't have any of those physical posters on hand since I'm at home, but this was a post from our school principal in our nightly news that she sends out every week. She kind of gave a shout out to me because I provided these two, well, basically a station where I displayed all of their projects for our open house, and parents were able to come in and look at it, families and students. And you can kind of see from the caption she left that they looked amazing and thank you for sharing. But I had a bunch of them, and a bunch of them just came out really incredible. A lot of kids put a lot of great effort into them.
I like the mix. I like the
Yeah.
mix you had of the narrative and then the art elements. I mean, I can imagine the kids were so much more engaged than if you said, write me a personal narrative about yourself or a character.
Oh yeah.
Just the creativity that this could inspire, and just looking at the pictures, they look like they were a lot of fun.
Yeah, and even it was inspiring in like educator standpoint, because you know it kind of made me think about like how I can maybe incorporate this for every unit or for every project that we did. Maybe it didn't have to be a mini unit. Maybe I could have replaced this for our personal narrative. So it was interesting, and later I'll get into kind of the results and what it did for the kids and for the entire year almost. But I do want to talk about the second example that I kind of did, which was our the final one that I'm going to share with you all. This is our comic book mini unit that I tried to incorporate right before our fiction unit to kind of get them warmed up for fictional writing and for all of the elements such as the hero's journey that we were about to tell them about. This was maybe 4 or 5 days. I didn't get too much into the comic books just because, you know, it was, again, a short mini fiction unit. And I kind of wanted the kids just to kind of develop their own story through, you know, just a couple of pages. So basically, I use Book Creator again, and that's what you kind of see in the center there. I'm going to show my example of Book Creator here in a second. That will allow me to kind of get more into Book Creator, so that you all know how to kind of, you know, look at it and what it does. But basically, the project was supposed to be 3 to 5 pages. 3 of the pages kind of had to consist of 3 to 4 of the pages had to kind of consist of their story. They had to tell a story about a main character that they made up in 3 to 4 pages. And you know, I told the kids to keep it simple. You know, it could be, you know, basically where they take off in the story where their character is in the climax or in the main part of the story where they're saving the friend, or you know they're on the verge of death and they finally overcome it and surviving. Whatever it may be, it needs to be the main point because we didn't have time for, you know, a chapter book. And then, you know, some of these other images that you see here on the slide are the different panels that I provided for the kids, comic book blank panels. You know, these were just some of the different printouts and handouts that I had available to the kids in class. But again, this was all physical. So all the kids did this pretty much on paper. They used art supplies, different resources that I made available to them, such as arts and crafts. The only technology aspect that they had to do was what I'm going to show through Book Creator and also through their Chromebooks, which I've already kind of elaborated on. So, you know, they'd look up images and trace different things that they needed. Some of them had to look up different comic book examples. Of course, I provided my own example on Book Creator, and that's what I'm going to show in a second. I did allow the kids, however, to get into the opportunity of using Book Creator just for their entire comic. So they could have created an entire comic book on Book Creator if they wanted. But unfortunately, we ran into a roadblock with Book Creator, and that's kind of what I want to express right now with you all. So let me go ahead and show Book Creator. So hopefully, oh no, let me get out of this, and let me just go to it. So this is what Book Creator looks like. Can you see it right now? Or
Yep.
Perfect. Let me see if I can push online, read online. So you can actually publish this book online. This is kind of what Book Creator looks like. as far as like the editing and kind of like publishing process kind of looks like. You can kind of go to your library here and kind of look at your different libraries. Of course, you're going to have to sign in and log in with a different Google account. But the roadblock we came to we came into with is it only allowed so many books to be published. So if I go back to my library, uh, you have to upgrade for more libraries, and I didn't realize that that was a problem that we were going to have to solve. And unfortunately, my district wasn't at the point to pay for that upgrade yet. So you know, we were only able to make so many books. The other roadblock that I ran into is that, you know, if the kids aren't logged in or they're not on Book Creator, I can't really access their books right now. It's locked. So I would basically have to have them log back in, get back on Book Creator, and have them publish their book for me to access them. So unfortunately, I'm not able to share any of their examples. But those are two things I kind of wanted to highlight out to you all, just so that you know about that when you start using Book Creator. So of course, this is my book. This big old icon here is how I edit it. If I go to the editing page and what the editing page looks like, there's a bunch of different options for me to kind of use here. I can basically go to different panels for comic books, speech, thought bubbles. You know, I can incorporate media, import, camera, shapes. This is just something you kind of have to play around with and get used to. What I kind of want to show right now for the time purposes is my book. What I kind of showed the kids as an example of what they can do and how short and simple it can be. So the Amazing McCallum, I kind of imported an image of me. I tried to keep the format of what a comic book looks like. And what's cool is after you publish it, it creates this little crease here on the side to kind of show that, you know, this is a worn comic book, which I kind of like. And then I just basically got into a simple story. You know, I have a student saying, help, I'm in the classroom. You can have these different images of, you know, a desk and stuff like that, or even draw it. And then teach, I'm saying, how may I help you? Student doesn't know. I'm saying this kid can't be serious. Kid's like, I need help. I take off. I find my, you know, place of comfort or to put my mind at ease, which is climbing, a huge hobby of mine. And then I come back. Student is like, I wonder where he went. And then Mr. McCallum, you know, the amazing McCallum comes back to help again. So very simple. Didn't have to be too long. I just kind of made a silly example really quickly for my kids to show how simplistic it can be. And I gave the kids an option of doing it on here. You know, unfortunately, a lot of us ran into that roadblock, and I only had about second and third hour be able to make them on this. And then after, you know, it kind of closed us out. My other hours couldn't do it. But what was required was each kid had to make and let me go back to this presentation. Each kid had to make a title page. So the title page had to be on Book Creator. And everything else could be physical. So they ended up turning in this comic book. It was great. And unfortunately, it was something that we did right before the COVID pandemic. So, you know, a lot of their examples are actually in my turn-in bin right now. Some of them are still at home with kids who took it home to keep working on them. And I kind of get sad about that because, you know, a lot of kids have been emailing me about that project and waiting to keep doing it. Some of the results that I'm going to get into, and this is kind of my final last takeaway for the presentation, is number one, first and foremost, it increased student engagement big time. You know, I had kids that were asking questions during these mini lessons, that were collaborating and, you know, basically wanting to know more or wanting to go out to different spaces to make their poster or their project even better. So, you know, there was moments in this mini lesson or this mini project where I was able to take them to our makerspace, which is in our school, a different space for them to kind of get access to different STEAM-tastic tools and different stuff like that. So that was really great. Another great result was creativity. So, you know, by me incorporating that creativity aspect in the classroom with these two projects, it transitioned into other units that we had, like poetry and letter writing and even essay writing. So I didn't have much of a problem in trying to, increase their creativity or their imagination through different topics that I had provided them in class. It was kind of already there. By me incorporating that Halloween project, for example, in the beginning of the year, it kind of already, increased their creativity from the start. So that was great. That was awesome. And then the third result was, of course, it increased student participation because another element that I included on these projects was they had to present. They, of course, had to share with one another, whether that be at their desk or in small groups or with a partner. And then finally, they had to collaborate. They had to kind of, go across to each other in the classroom and get ideas from one another. When they went into that makerspace, they were collaborating with different tools and using those, and the accessibility they had. So the student participation in these areas, such as presenting, was, at an all-time high. I mean, most kids are super shy to get in front of the class or just scared to even show their work or present with their peers about what they did. But I had no issues with that. Every single kid wanted to just basically go first. They were all jumping up at the moment to, share their work. And then, the last thing was that, the scores that we do through Jump Rope, which is another image here, our standard-based grading system, they had shot up. A lot of kids were getting meetings and exceedings because of the amount of effort they put into these projects. So I'm glad I got to share these little STEAM-tastic ideas with you of how I incorporated STEAM into my classroom. Writing can be a subject I think we can all agree on that kids have trouble with, that kids, often think that is boring, in other words. So I'm always looking for new ways to kind of innovate the process of writing and, make it more interesting for kids, especially at an age level that I teach, 11 through 13. It can be hard. And I think, by getting on the internet and looking through resources and kind of getting different ideas from other teachers is a great way to start. And that's kind of how I started. So thank you. And I hope you enjoy these STEAM-tastic ideas in writing.
Yeah, these are fantastic. So I'm assuming that a lot of your sixth graders are probably, I know a lot of sixth graders in general are already into comics and are reading
Oh,
graphic
yeah.
novels. And so to be able to create one on their own or to think about writing in that format is probably really, as you said, an engaging way to kind of meet them where they're at.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's part of why, right? Like that's part of why I incorporated that comic book is because, every time they were coming back from the library and I would see their book in their hand or in their binder, it was a graphic novel. It was something that was similar to a comic book. So I was like, hey, why not, try to incorporate a comic book into their writing? So it worked out great.
Are there any things that you're doing now with them as you're doing the remote learning that's kind of pulling some of these threads into what they're doing now?
That's a great question. I've been taking a step back. At first, I was kind of, still going through curriculum, still trying to provide as much instruction and content as I could. But, I started to think about like how overwhelming that could be, especially in a situation like now for the kids. But one thing that I have done, I guess that is in association with STEAM, is provide silly things. Like for example, this Easter, I made a music video myself with my girlfriend at home, and this music video was kind of like I guess you could say it's a parody on the Drake Tootsie slide. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's a big TikTok that
Yep.
kids are watching right now. And I basically made my own version. I recorded my own lyrics to the beat. I kind of made my own spin on the song that was geared towards Franklin Knights. It's actually on our Franklin STEAM Academy Facebook page. I recommend you check it out. It's at like 2,000 views, so I'm so excited about that. But basically, we did this music video, and I kind of shot it in the same way that he did his music video, and then I put it out to the kids. And I'm getting nothing but positive feedback, great comments from the kids and from parents, just telling me how awesome that was for them. And I'm in season right now. I'm a head track coach, and track kind of got canceled. So what I've been doing is putting out workout videos every day for the kids. I of course do that nonprofit organization with Project Athletes. So they provided me like this little cool weird stand for putting my phone on and recording myself. So I put out a lot of content as that for that. And then for our meets, I put out challenges. I did a "What's your name" challenge, so they have to spell out their name and the different workout is associated with each letter. So I'm just trying to make it fun and just put a smile on their face basically with different content that I create.
Well, and I think it's interesting because that is still connecting in with content. I mean, if we look at our standards, whether they're our arts production standards, our SEL standards, we
Mhm.
talk about fostering that enthusiasm for learning, connecting into things that they're interested in, being creative. You can still connect in with your writing standards and the different content standards through that, and they're having fun while they're doing it. So yeah,
Definitely.
thanks for sharing these ideas. These have been fantastic. And
Yeah, I hope they are. Yeah, that's why I wanted to kind of get on here and just try to give you these ideas and other people these ideas so that they maybe use them.